I'm Sandy Jacobs. I'm a lifetime resident of Hayes. I've been married to my husband Dan for 48 years. We have two wonderful children, Sarah Mitchell, who lives in Colorado Springs and is married to a lieutenant colonel in the Army. She's given us 4 fabulous grandchildren. Our son lives in Kansas City, and we get to see him often because we have a lot of family down there, so we run back and forth a lot. I think people probably know me in one of 2 ways. I was a banker in the community for 40 years, for all intents and purposes. The other piece is, for 40 years, I volunteered in this community. I think it gave me an insight that probably convinced me it was time for me to run for public office. And you know, the other thing I don't want to leave left unsaid is, after I retired, I was fortunate enough to be approached by the Heartland Community Foundation. They needed an executive director part-time at that time, and they needed somebody that was kind of visible, and I have been kind of visible. So I took it on, and it has become a love for me after 2 years. Wonderful organization, so needed in this community by so many different entities. I'm actually serving an unexpired term of Representative Eber Phelps. He was on the commission when he ran for state office and was successful. It seemed like a good idea to give it a try before I actually would have to run for office and see if it was something, 1, that I wanted to do, and 2, that the city was comfortable with. So fortunately I was chosen, and I have it's hard to say, but I think this is the best job I ever had. I really appreciate what I'm doing behind the desk because of everything I've done on the other side of the desk. I've so often come before the commission asking for things throughout the years for many different entities. Looking at it from this side of the desk gives me a whole new perspective. I understand people when they come forward and they have requests, whether it be something that has to do with infrastructure, whether it has with monetary needs. I think I've been kind of around the horn, if you will, and I can understand the requests up to and including economic development issues. I've looked at a lot of business plans over the years as a banker. I understand business plans and the financial side of it. So I think that part of it gives me a little bit of my old banking world. So it's kind of the best of all worlds for me. I have been so impressed throughout our community, throughout the organization, all the department heads, all of the associates within the city. I don't think the community really understands how much they really do. We get the opportunity at the commission now to have new employees come to the commission meeting and be introduced. I absolutely love that. I think it gives them a feeling of being a part of everything. We get to see everybody that's promoted, so we understand the value of our people's, 1, long-term service, so they're promoted to the next, and also people's desire to come into the organization. It's a pretty amazing group. The staff makes sure that the commissioners understand everything we need to understand to make good decisions. If somebody said to me, what is the major issue or challenge in the city right now, it would have to be the declining sales tax, because it really does start that circle of things. We run our general fund on city sales tax. If that declines, we have to either cut back our spending or figure out better ways to do it, better ways to budget. Our staff has been outstanding in the budgeting process over the last numbers of years. We hold our mill levy to 25, and I think it's been 25 mills for maybe 12 years. That's outstanding. With a declining sales tax, we have to really watch every dollar. And I think that's something I bring to the table when we say, what have we done that makes a difference? I think watching that kind of spending, now we have staff that watches it so carefully that when it comes to us, it's almost informational rather than decision making. I think that one thing I do bring is an understanding of the financials. Now, that learning curve you're talking about, I did financial information for 40 years in my career. City budgeting is a whole lot different, and it was really interesting for me to go through the budget process. I think if you look at our budget, that is one of the biggest things staff and commission has done, is hold that budget in line. The other thing that is so important that we've been able to do, and it's not just in this year but in previous years, is pay cash, pay as you go for things that we want to do. We're doing a lot of street improvements. We just finished 8th Street, which I think is fantastic. If you haven't driven, you need to. That was paid for. We didn't have to bond that out. We're getting ready to do Allen Street, which is a long stretch, and we've got money set aside for that. So the budgeting process and the reserve process that the staff has been able to accomplish, and along with the commission, is really good. You know, that's always an interesting decision for the commissioners. We need to be focused on economic development all the time, but then you say, what can we do? The first thing that comes to people's minds, I think, when we're talking about economic development is incentives. People say, Sandy, are you in favor of incentives? I am in favor of incentives, but that's not a broad brush approval of everything that would come before the commission. I'm interested in seeing business plans that make sense, that is a win-win for the business and for our community. When we find those kinds of plans brought forward, I think incentives should be on the table, absolutely. I'm growth-oriented, I always have been. As a banker, I wanted to see all of the communities I had banks in succeed, so I stayed focused on economic development. That incentive piece is what people know. When you talk about economic development, the first thing that comes to people's minds, I think, is incentives. I think that's one thing they are concerned about. They're concerned about retail development. We all want the best of everything when it comes to retail stores and restaurants and entertainment. And of course, from a commission standpoint, we're very interested in those things because that's what drives sales tax. I think that people want the stores they want. You know, over the years we've done retail investigations, we've done retail studies, and we find a list of stores that everybody wants. People want retail development, but they don't want tax increases. And I think one goes with the other. If we can get the retail development that continue to drive our sales tax, that issue takes care of itself. I think people also want to discuss housing. When we say we have an affordable housing issue, I want to be sure that we have that. We recently had a study done in the city, a housing study that we had the university complete for us, the Docking Institute. People need to understand that study was done at a point in time, and it was actually based on information from 2015, which really isn't very relevant in a time in 16 and 17 with the economic conditions that we've had. I think that if we believe there's a housing problem, we need to do more study. I'm not willing to jump into that yet as a commissioner and say the city needs to do that study. I would like to I'm all about collaboration in everything I do. I would like people to come to the table and tell us what they think they need. I would like a roundtable discussion that might include the university and the medical center and the city and the county, as well as businesses in our community. I think that if you can get all those people around one table and come out shoulder to shoulder, I think we can make some things happen, whether it be economic development, solving housing issues. There's all kinds of things that group of people can bring together. And one thing that I believe is, for 20 years, there's been commissioners and staff before me that have done an amazing job at researching and resourcing possible water sources. And I think the R9 Ranch is the solution that makes the most sense for everybody. It actually, from a cost standpoint, may sound expensive to people, but it's a long-term solution. It's a 75-year solution for water in this community at the very least. So I think it's important that people understand what the R9 is going to do, and I think we'll be hearing more about it in the future. I actually made a trip down there recently for the first time and got to hear the water people from the state talk. And the more I learn, and when you talk about learning and the learning curve, that's one thing I have to learn more about. But everything I've learned so far says staff and previous commissioners have done a great job. if there's anything that has driven conversation, and I am walking areas of the community to talk to people about concerns, and that has come up. There will be one that says, don't you ever do a roundabout. And the next one says, oh, I love roundabouts. So I think from a city standpoint, I happen to like roundabouts. I've driven them a lot. I find it pretty easy, and I think the people of this community would learn to drive it very easily. Cost is going to be the factor, and I think when we look at the cost, I have this famous phrase that people hear from me. I say, where do money come from? And with federal and state funding being what it is right now, it could be more difficult, but I think the study is necessary. I think if we're looking for more development, retail development on either side of Vine Street, south of the interstate, I think we need to look at those intersections back there and figure out how we're going to get people in and out of there more efficiently, and whether it be signals or whether it be roundabouts. You know, I think people know a lot about me. I believe in transparency, Becky. I think that whatever we do at the city commission level should be very transparent with the citizens in this community. I think knowledge is power, and I think we should give our citizens power. And that comes from letting them know what's going on and staying transparent. The other word that you hear really often from me is that collaboration or consensus building. I think that that's important with any issue. But the collaboration piece, we have dynamic organizations in this community. Fort Hays State University, Hays Med, the two public utilities, Sunflower Electric, Midwest Energy, business people in this community. We're all focused on the same thing, and that is what is the best thing for the city of Hays, what makes sense. And that's what I'd like to see happen. Let's keep doing what makes sense.